And welcome once again to another edition of Strange Planet. Regular listeners to this podcast are well aware that my lovely bride, the mighty Aphrodite, is Greek. My children are half Greek. Greece is kind of a second home. I love it there. I love the culture. I love the food. And so when the subject of owls comes up, that's near and dear to us because, of course, the owl is the symbol of Athena, Athens. And, of course, was also the symbol of the Greek goddess Athena. And plus, we just love owls. What's not to love? These amazing creatures. But throughout history and across so many different cultures, owls have been held in high regard. They are regarded with both fascination, awe, fear. Many cultures have sort of contradictory beliefs about them. They've been, as I say, feared. They've been venerated. They've been despised. They've been admired. They've been considered wise and foolish. My next guest has found a fascinating interconnection between owls and the paranormal, UFOs, the afterlife, the alien abduction experience, and more. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Mike Cleland to the program, an avid outdoorsman, illustrator, UFO researcher. He's written extensively on the subject of alien abduction, synchronicities, and owls. And it was his firsthand experiences with these elusive events that have been the foundation for his research. His website, Hidden Experience, explores these events and their connections to the alien contact phenomena. This site also features over 200 hours of audio interviews with visionaries and experts examining the complexities of the overall UFO experience. And he is the author of several books, including the Messengers, Owl Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee. Stories from the Messengers, accounts of owls, UFOs, and a deeper reality, and Hidden Experience, a memoir of owl synchronicity and UFO contact. Michael Cleland, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So, you had an interesting encounter with owls. You were with a camping companion. I think this goes back, what, maybe 15, 16 years?
About 16 years, yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of launched this whole area of research for you. What happened?
So 16 years ago, I'm 60 now. At the time, I would have been 44, and I was living out west in right near Grand Teton National Park. So big, beautiful place. And there was a woman who had spent the summer in town, and I met her. She was working at the office I worked at. I worked for an outdoor school, and so I was camping all the time, camped all summer, and I'd been up in Alaska that summer. So I came back to Teton Valley, which is just on the other side of the Tetons from Jackson Hole. And I had a conversation with this young woman, and I said, "Hey, boy, you've been here all summer. You must have gone camping a lot." And she said, "No, I didn't camp once." So I said, "Oh, I'll take you camping." So we went out for one night, and it's, you know, I'm not quite sure. It was either September or October, but it was just one of those beautiful nights. And we left to go camping out in the mountains, like after lunch sometime. And the weather was going to be perfect, so we didn't take a shelter. We were just going to plan on sleeping outside. And so this was odd. This was sort of a first date in a weird way. Mm-hmm. And I'm still very close to her. In fact, I just texted her just this morning, Kristen. And so we were having a conversation as the sun was setting. This conversation plays into it in a little bit, but I was struck, like, she said something that really impressed me. Like, I was like, oh, this is a complete stranger, but wow, I'm impressed. There's a depth to her and an intellect and a spirituality, and it hit me right in this. So as this was happening, one owl flew over us, a second owl flew over us, and then a third owl flew over us. And these owls flew around us and landed near us, and we eventually laid down to go to sleep. And so we just set our sleeping pads down on the ground under the stars. Beautiful Rocky Mountain, far north, high elevation, not as far north as you are, but pretty far north. And these owls would fly right above our faces. They would go and swoop right above our faces. And in that moment, the stars would be blocked out. So you'd be looking up at the stars, and there's no noise. Owls very silent in flight, just like whoosh, whoosh. It would be this moment of blackness. It was really cool. So cool. So the next morning we were like, wow, that was great. And I said, hey, let's go camping again. If we do this, so 4 days later, we went camping again, totally different part of the mountains. Sun is setting. We're watching the sunset. This is 3 owls fly around us. Before, they kind of landed off in a tree branch, kind of over there, or they'd fly a little bit high above us. Or the second time, we had this owl experience, and I'm convinced they were the same 3 owls. We were many miles away from where we were before. I can't vouch for that, but the 3 owls landed at our feet. And I just remember looking at Kristen, looking at her face, and she just had this expression of just, and I was the same way. It was really magical. So to have it happen once was pretty cool. To have it happen twice kind of freaked me out. And I worked in the outdoor industry. I asked everyone, hey, has this ever happened to you? Like, owls land, and like people were like, nope, never happens to me. Nope. And to have it happen with the same person 4 days later was remarkable. Now, what I didn't say when I started telling these stories, and I'm saying it now, is that when I saw those owls, both nights, real owls, these were real owls, they were about 11 inches tall and cute and did owl things. And we had perfect view. They were right up close. They were right next to us. So we had, I had a voice in my head that said, this has something to do with the UFOs. Now, so I'm 44, and I had kind of been reading and had an interest in UFO lore and was reading books and reading mostly about the abduction accounts. And I had a series of events in my youth with missing time, with a close-up UFO sighting. And then also when I was 30, I had an experience of waking up in the middle of the night and looking out the window, and there were 5 like classic gray aliens standing outside my window. I dismissed all of this. I wasn't going to go there. I pushed it away. No way. I'm not going there. I dismissed it. So what happened is I saw these owls, real owls. I had a voice in my head that said, this has something to do with UFOs. And I started looking into my own experiences. And at the same time, I was looking into the folklore of owls, the mythology of owls. This really shook me up, this event. And so when I started looking into this, I was reaching out to people. I was reaching out to researchers. I was reaching out to people who had the direct contact experience. I started a website. And as I was reaching out to people, I would ask them, hey, by the way, have you ever had any odd experiences with owls? Now, it was not 100% of the people, but I would say, wow, it was enough that there was a powerful pattern. And people would say, no one has ever asked me that. I have the weirdest story with that happened to me with an owl. So I just started collecting these stories. I started recording people. I started writing these down. I started asking people on my website. Oh, so let me just jump back. So when I started my website, I started it 3 years after. So yeah, 2000. So I started a website in 2009, and the event with Kristen was in 2006. So that was 3 years later. Kristen had moved away. We kept in touch, and the story I just told, I put it up on my blog as like a post. My site was originally just synchronicities and stories that had kind of stories like that story I just told, which I've got a lot of stories like that. And I contacted her and I said, what were we talking about the very first night when we saw the very first owls? Because I remember that she was talking about something and it coincided exactly. And she said, oh, I remember exactly what I was talking about. I was giving my deepest, most heartfelt definition of what God means to me. And now, like, I'm not especially churchy or anything like that, but I do recognize the place, the position of the God mythology in our society. Like, that is, to me, that was like a mythic symbol that showed up within the context of this owl event. And that's what so the core of my research is owls as a mythic symbol and how it relates to the majority of my research has been about UFO contact, but I owls and death. I've got a lot of death stories. I've got a lot of meditation stories, people meditating, a lot of people's stories where people take mushrooms and see owls. And these stories are imbued with this kind of mythic quality to it. It's like listening to a fable. rather than listening to a real life event.
I don't know, 150 years ago, you might have been able to have this conversation with our ancestors or a Native American because they were so much closer to, you know, the lore and so forth surrounding, and the stories and the oral traditions surrounding owls. What do you think that conversation would have sounded like if you went asking these questions? You know, what is going on here?
So I could have sat around the campfire in a village in, let's say, South Dakota, and I could have asked the elders, like, I had a powerful experience with an owl. They may have said, so like, and so what I will also say, then I could get the answer from those elders, and I could go over the hill to the next village, and they would have a similar but different. So I think there's a variety of these, but the core events would be owls are symbolic of the night, right? They see in the darkness. So they're symbolic of the night. And the metaphor of the night, you turn the clock back 300 years, like you said. So we live in a world with electric light bulbs. The night does not have the same mystique that it did to, that's not even ancient times, or just our ancestors from a few generations ago.
Yeah, pre-Edison.
Yeah, pre-Edison. Yeah, it was something totally different. So the night was a place of testing. The night was a place of confronting your fears. The night was a place of the unknown, the shadow. So the owl symbolizes that other realm. Owls can see into the night, and consequently, they can travel. So owls can fly through the forest in complete darkness. Our ancestors knew that just the same way we know that. That must have seemed remarkable. We can now say, oh, they have evolutionary skills that they've developed, after a millennia, and they have just eyes that are especially suited to seeing in low light. So, but what they are doing is essentially magic. They are flying through the forest at night. What that implies is that they can travel into that mythic realm of the forest at night and meet with the ancestors, meet with the gods, meet with the dead. They could travel to that other realm symbolically, and then they would return with a message. So I get letters all the time. And when I had to pick a name for the book, I saw a pattern right in the letters. People would say, the owl showed up, it landed on my fence post in the backyard at this really important moment. And then they would just talk about these powerful events. And then they would refer back to the owl and the messenger on the fence post. They would just drop the word owl, and they just would call it the messenger. So that became, it was easy to title the book The Messengers because of that. So people would just drop right into that mythic lore in their own storytelling. They would just, instead of calling it an owl, they would say a messenger. Right.
I'm sure Joseph Campbell had lots to say about owls.
Very little. I found almost nothing that I searched hard. Yeah. Joseph Campbell was young, didn't say much about owls either, but, and neither just other people have. John Mack, the professor of psychiatry at Harvard, he wrote, extensively about the owls and their connection to UFO contact.
So I love what you were saying about, this symbolic connection between owls and the netherworld and so forth, and our ancestors. But what about the literal connection? I mean, what's going on there? What are they, if they're messengers, what are they bringing to us? What are they hoping to impart to us? What do we glean from these encounters with owls?
Okay, so that's a great question, and if you take I got 3 books about owls and UFOs. You stack them up on one on top of each other, 3 books. It's about 1,000 pages, and I can't answer that question. I can dance around it. I can sort of answer it, but I cannot give you an answer to why owls. What's it mean? What's the literal meaning? I can dance around the symbolic meaning, but so my first thing I would say, the owls wake up. The owl is an alarm clock. It is saying, wake up. And then, let me just tell a quick story. So this woman contacts me, and she had a lifetime of UFO contact experiences, and she was very, very stressed out and dealing with it when she moved to a town specifically so she could have meet with like a UFO support group. And this was in the on the Pacific coast in the north. And she would walk her dog on this long jetty that went out into the saltwater. And so one day it was pouring down rain, and the dog wanted to go out, and she was walking the dog. Now, she never would go out in the pouring rain, right? So she's walking the dog in the pouring rain. And she gets all the way to the end of the jetty, and she goes, "What am I doing here? Why did I come out in the pouring down rain?" She turns around, and there is a owl facing her on the jetty. And her dog is very high strung. And she said, "My dog like should have barked and chased this thing." The dog sat down like it was confronting royalty. So this owl, they stare at each other, and it's this magical moment. The owl flies off. And then not long after, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she opted to take traditional just chemotherapy. And she said she was right at the edge of death. And and she survived. And I think it's now 20 years or so now she's been cancer free. So I said, "Do you think the owl is connected to the cancer?" And she said, "The owl wasn't connected to the cancer. The owl was telling me," this is her words, "the owl was telling me your life is about to get challenging." So that would be one of my other things. The owls represent a challenge. So the question I ask people, what was going on in your life leading up to the event? What changed after the event? What was going on in her life leading up to the event was she was terrified. She was scared. She was having UFO contact experiences. She was frightened. She said, "I was scared of my own shadow." After this, after going to the edge of death and beating cancer, I said, "So what happened after?" She said, "I am afraid of nothing." So there's a symbolic story. It took a minute or so to tell that story, but there's a symbolic story that encapsulates one aspect of this richer mystery where the owl would represent a challenge. And I feel strongly that challenge doesn't mean it's bad, right? So challenge means hard work, but there's often great benefits from persevering in the face of a challenge.
Mike, we'll take a quick time out, come back, and delve further into owls. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. And we're back with Mike Cleland, illustrator, UFO researcher, avid outdoorsman, and the books, The Messengers, Owl, Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee, stories from the messengers, accounts of owls, UFOs, and a deeper reality, and Hidden Experience, a memoir of owl, synchronicity, and UFO contact. Do you have memories of missing time? Memories of missing time.
I have memories of my parents being angry at me for coming home late when I was darn sure I was home on time. So yeah.
And also memories of looking out your window and seeing, was it 5 grays, I guess? Were they grays?
The classic textbook grays, yeah.
Yeah. What is the connection between those encounters, experiences, and owls. I mean, do you remember an owl being present?
Not for any of those events. I've had other events where owls have been present. But so, ooh, I I in I, I'm at a point now where I recognize the owl is symbolic of what I have been calling a highly charged human experience. So, seeing a UFO is definitely a highly charged human experience, but so is a powerful synchronicity. So is the death of someone close to you, most often a parent. A lot of owl experiences where a parent or a very close friend dies. So that's a life-changing human experience. Shamanic initiation shows up as with owls. So that's well understood. There's still shamans. There's still people being initiated into a lineage of shamans in native tribes, as well as in a more westernized format. It is well understood that owls show up around the time of the initiation process of a shaman. So these are all powerful human events. So how does it intertwine with the UFO contact experience? One way to say it is it's just one of a series of highly charged experiences. I can say that what the best way for me to do this would be to tell a story. And the problem is some stories are so long. Let me just think for a second.
We have time. We have time.
Yeah. If the owl is connected to the UFO experience, so here, I'll tell you one story. This happened to me personally. I was camping in the desert in southern Utah. There's a place called the Burr Trail Road. It's this famous primitive road that connects these two small towns and goes through this remarkable part of southern Utah. And I was with a friend. Her name is Natasha, and she's from Germany. And we had done a long drive, and we were just camping out under the stars. There's a kind of a theme here in my stories, a lot of sleeping outside. And so we're camping under the stars, and Natasha was jet lagged, and I had been driving all day, so I was tired. This is a very remote, empty, beautiful spot. And so she says, "What do I do? I'm jet lagged, and what can I do?" And I said, "Go walk under the stars. It's a beautiful night." So she left, and she said the night was so beautiful, she didn't need a flashlight. There was no moon, and the starlight was bright enough that she could walk on this asphalt road. And she said it felt like I was sparkling. Like it was so magical. She said it felt like I was sparkling. Now I'm lying in the spot on the, just by our car. And as I'm lying there, there is an owl hooting near my head. It's a great horned owl. It's in this bush. It's hooting near my head. I've never been that close to a hooting owl. Loud, booming, calm desert night, just magical. She's not more than a few hundred yards away, walking on this road. She's walking along. She sees what she thinks is someone with a flashlight. Someone's got a flashlight off in the sagebrush, and then the light kind of starts to float, and then it gets really big, like the size of a beach ball, and then poof, it disappears. And she realized she was seeing some sort of floating orb. There was nobody there. She's seeing some sort of floating orb. It got really big, and poof, it exploded and kind of vanished. And so she runs back and wakes me up and says, like, Mike, we got to leave. And I'm like, what's up? And she explains that I just saw this thing, and now I'm scared, and now I was scared. So we packed up the car and drove away. Now, I was listening to an owl simultaneous with her seeing a UFO, right? So it's a unidentified object that's flying, this floating orb. And this story is connected to two other stories on a map. Like they line up on a map over years. And it took me, it's the culmination of one of my books where I discuss this in detail, how I put that event and this other event tied up to a map. Now, there's similar to so many accounts, they're tied to other things. They're overlapping with other things. So it's very tough to tell a story without getting pulled astray on these other things. So owl and UFO, same night, and that happened to me. And I was already well immersed in the research when this happened. So it was particularly highly charged because I was like, well, this is it. This is what I research, and here it happened to me. So
Wow. Remarkable. Um, Whitley Strieber is a fan of your work. He's been on the program, the author of Communion, and obviously a lifelong experiencer.
mm-hmm.
What does he make of the? Does he have an owl story?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. So I actually went. So in the book Communion, that was the book that altered the definition, our pop culture definition of what UFO contact means. Right. So that book changed the public zeitgeist. I'm doing this. I think on page 24 of that book, he talks about an event because I footnoted it many times. It might be so. He talks about an event where it was the evening of Christmas Day. So it was Christmas Day. It wasn't Christmas Eve. It was the evening of Christmas Day. So on the night of the 25th. So here's another highly charged day in like the calendar. He had that event that became the core of the mystery of the Communion story. That's with a gray alien with the big black eyes. And he woke up, and when he woke up in the morning, he told his wife, said there was an owl on the windowsill. So he didn't say I was abducted by aliens. He said there was an owl on the windowsill. And then these other memories emerged. And so it was wintertime. It was in upstate New York. There was snow, and there was the windowsill had snow on it. And then the ledge of the window below the window, there was fresh snow. The snow had been there. There was no footprints. There was no markings that an owl had been there. And it's written in the story. I'm going to paraphrase it poorly. He's a very poetic, beautiful writer. He said, when I saw an owl on that windowsill last night, when I saw there was no footprints in the snow, basically my blood ran cold because I knew something else had happened. And I will say also, so Whitley's written a lot of books on the subject. I went through, got all his books and did a word search for the word owl. And then I put it all on my blog. It's these good chunks. And so it would be about 8 typewritten pages of Whitley writing about owls. Now he does something that I wish I could do. He writes beautifully and succinctly and poetically. And, but basically you could read those 8 pages and he's essentially describing the same mystery. Whitley says something that I like, and I don't want to use it because it's his. He says the owls are speaking to us in a new language. That the owl experience is a form of language. That is, it is a form of communication. I'm saying that the owls are messengers. We're essentially saying the same thing using just slightly nuanced vocabulary words.
Did your work help him make any of those connections?
No, but his work helped me make those connections. So he came first. I did not discover the owl thing as far as being part of the UFO lore. I'm the one who like took the deep dive and got all obsessed about it and wrote so much about it. And the reason I gotta say, the reason I took the deep dive and got so obsessed was because when I do a talk like this, or when I talk from a stage, or my blog posts, or when I will ask, please, if you have an owl story, contact me. I'm easy to contact. You can Google UFO owl. I'm the first thing that comes up. So if anyone, anywhere in the world, they don't have to know who I am. If they have a weird experience with a UFO and an owl, it's the internet era now. They just get on Google. They type in UFO owl. What does this mean? My name is the first thing that comes up. Right on the first page, it says, I want to hear your owl stories. I get roughly one good owl story a day. And that's been going on for a decade or more.
That's remarkable.
So I am so hyper focused. I'm like looking at this thin little layer in this giant, like the UFO lore in the UFO literature is like this like, where do you back the truck up to like try to make sense of this thing? So, and I'm looking at the narrowest sliver. And when I wrote an essay back in 2013, and I figured, I'll like write a little, magazine length article, and I'll be done with this and move on. That was a decade ago now. So I what I found is that pulling on this one little thread, the owls, it has been so rewarding. It has been so rich. And so I use the term that mythic language, or that mythic power, or that archetypal power that is interwoven into these stories. That has always, I've always been drawn to that. So I'm not saying this is true, but I'll tell you, it feels like this. It feels like that was in my personality, to be drawn to those kind of mythic stories. The universe gave me a powerful set of owl experiences, right? So I had a message, the messenger. I'm looking at a real owl, little 11-inch owl on the ground. Voice in my head says, this has something to do with UFOs. I start pulling on that thread, asking for owl stories, and it has been unrelenting. Well, that makes it sound negative. It has been remarkable, the power and the beauty of some of the stories I've been receiving.
Another timeout, Mike. Back in a moment. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hey there, welcome once again to another edition of Strange Planet. Thank you for sticking me in your ear. The Columbia River Gorge is a spectacular river canyon, 80 miles long and 4,000 feet deep, that meanders past cliffs, spires, and ridges set against nearby peaks of the Pacific Northwest's Cascade Mountain Range. And as it turns out, the Columbia River Gorge in Washington State is also a world-class paranormal adventure destination, and that is where we are headed tonight. My guest, James Szubski, is the Chief Operating Officer of Margie's Outdoor Store, which is located deep within the Columbia River Gorge in Washington. In 2022, his store initiated a paranormal reporting program, which has now received well over 100 reports of strange activity in the gorge area. James is a former volunteer search and rescue EMT, a wildland firefighter, a mountain guide, and a highly decorated U.S. Army infantry veteran. He earned a degree in communications from the Evergreen State College and has enjoyed a decades-long career in the field, working for companies like Wizards of the Coast, the makers of Dungeons & Dragons, and Magic the Gathering. He currently volunteers his time as the leader of the Klickitat. I'm going to have to practice that one a little bit more. Klickitat Ape Cat research team. James Szubski, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
And first of all, thank you for your service.
Oh, my pleasure.
So tell me a little bit about, for someone who has never, I've been to Washington State, I've been to Seattle, but I have not ventured into the Columbia River Gorge. Give us a kind of a sense of the geography of this place.
Well, it is truly one of the most amazing and unique places in the world. Back in the 80s, the U.S. government designated it as a national scenic area. And so that protects it from overdevelopment and ensures that this place will stay beautiful forever. Now, just to give people a sense of where it is, if you imagine the Oregon and Washington state border, the Columbia River forms that border. And where I'm located is about an hour east of the city of Portland. And so, um, as you mentioned, the gorge is a deep river valley. It's about 85 miles long. And it creates most of the border, the southern border between Washington State and Oregon, and then it hooks north and heads up towards Canada. Now, what makes the gorge so unique is that it has truly apocalyptic origins. And the river has been flowing here for approximately 20 billion years, as best as anyone can estimate. And so, on a physical realm kind of perspective, that is a strong, strong current that's been flowing for a very long time. On an energetic level, you can imagine that this is for 20 million years when energy has been flowing through this valley, both in the form of water and wind and everything else. It has formed a very powerful current. So you've got this river that's sort of the baseline of everything. Then about 15 million years ago, great fissures opened in the earth near the Idaho-Washington state border. There's still a lot of debate about why this happened, but what came out of those fissures was truly apocalyptic. So trillions of gallons of liquid lava started spraying out of these fissures, and there was so much lava that it literally flowed 300 miles to the ocean. And some people are familiar with the Oregon coastline, things like Cannon Beach with those great sea stacks.
Gold
Those are
Coast.
all, yeah, those are all remnants from this epic lava flow. And they estimate that this erupted over hundreds of times, and it filled some areas of eastern Washington with up to 3 miles deep of lava, which hardened into basalt. And of course, when that basalt cools, it forms these spectacular hexagonal columns. And famously, there are some in England and like the Giant's Causeway, but sometimes they can extend, over 120 feet. So you've got this apocalypse by fire, and it flowed down the old river valley and filled the river valley in some places thousands of feet deep. And so the whole time that this is going on, the river and the lava are competing in this sort of epic battle. And so that's pretty astonishing, and it has created these amazing rock cliffs that are form the walls of the valley. But then, about 2 million years ago, we started to have a volcanic uplift. And so the Cascade Mountains started rising. And so we're talking about peaks like Mount Rainier, which is 14,400 feet tall, Mount St. Helens, which erupted in 1980, Mount Hood, Mount Adams, which is a UFO hotspot since the beginning of UFOs being sighted in the U.S., and of course, the famous Mount Shasta. So these are all having this great vertical uplift, these forces that are sort of perpendicular to the flow of the river. And they twisted and contorted the rock here and created a series of lava tube caves, and there are miles and miles of caves out here. And then 15,000 years ago, some of your listeners may be familiar with Randall Carlson or Graham Hancock, who talk about these earth-changing cataclysms. And so we have, there's a theory that there's a great lake in Missoula, Montana, and this glacial dam broke, and then epic floods washed across eastern Washington state. And these floods had so much water in them that they were estimated to be 10 times the flow of all rivers on Earth combined. If you can imagine, so the classic theory is that an ice dam broke and this glacial lake Missoula emptied. This is happening right at the end of the Ice Age, right at the Younger Dryas boundary. Recent theories say that perhaps a series of asteroid impacts occurred on the Cordilleran ice sheet in Canada, flash melted it, and that's what created these epic flows. So all of eastern Washington is what they call the channeled scablands, and it flowed across eastern Washington, got caught at a place called Wallula Gap, which is sort of the beginning of the Columbia River Gorge, and then shot down the Columbia River Gorge at speeds of 70 miles an hour, carrying boulders and icebergs and everything else. And it emptied into the ocean. Now, at the time that this is going on, it's a time in geological history known as the Younger Dryas boundary. And basically, after these events occurred, global sea levels rose by 300 feet, and 90% of the megafauna on North America went extinct. And so we're talking about things like mastodons, the American lion, short-faced bear. Those are all creatures that were endemic here. And as best as we can tell, during these events, they all went extinct. What happened in the gorge was that it scoured the sides of the gorge and created these dramatic landscapes, including the nation's highest concentration of waterfalls. And we have waterfalls that are over 600 feet here. On the Oregon side alone, there's at least 90 waterfalls. And so it is a spectacular and magically beautiful place. I think I might have a picture of it I can pull up quickly.
Yes.
And just give you a sense of what we're talking about here. Let me see if I can find a good image of it. So the gorge, this is probably going to be the best one for us to look at right now. Where is it?
Sunrise from Catherine Creek.
Yes. So what we're looking at is the gorge itself. In the foreground is Memaloose Island, known as the Island of the Dead. The Native American nations would bury their deceased loved ones there. And we're looking through the Lyle Gap. But you can see that it is a place that looks like a genuinely magical and unbelievable area.
That looks like a painting. That looks absolutely, that's just breathtaking.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives you a sense of where we are. And like I said, it is unlike any place in the world. We are well known for kayaking through the rivers, mountaineering. A lot of folks do windsurfing and wind kiting. And there's mountain biking and, of course, just numerous adventures, spelunking, caving, that kind of stuff. And so with my background, I'm in heaven as far as I'm concerned. And what brought us here is that my mother-in-law had started some businesses in Bingen, Washington. So again, this is about 60 miles east of Portland. And our sister city across the river in Oregon is Hood River. That's a place that more people know about than Bingen. And Margie had a couple of businesses there. And then a little over 2 years ago, she passed away. And my wife and I were living in Seattle, and we knew that someone needed to come down and run the businesses. And so we decided to move our family down here. One of those businesses was a store that wasn't really, Margie had started when she was sick. And so when I got here with my background, we converted it into an outdoor gear store because it's perfectly suited for the environment. And not long after we opened our doors and started calling ourselves Margie's Outdoor Store, folks started coming in and telling us stories of strange experiences they were having in the wilderness. And we were hearing a lot of Sasquatch stories, and we were hearing a lot of UFO stories, and other strange things as well. And on a personal level, I found this utterly fascinating.
You weren't skeptical initially, or?
You know, this is a kind of place like what we've come to learn about the gorge. And, you know, when I was in the military, I was stationed up at Fort Lewis, which is probably 3-4 hours away. And we would come down here and adventure. And so I had a sense that this was a special place. Like when you're here in the gorge, I mean, even if you're not spiritually sensitive in any way, you have a sense that you're in some place magical. And what we're coming to learn is that it's really, really common for folks out here to have a neighbor who has seen Sasquatch. In fact, just Monday night, I was in my garage. We live in a town called Stevenson, and it's about 20 minutes west of Bingen, where the stores are. And to give you a sense, so the Cascade Mountains, they're a huge area, probably 80,000 square miles. To give you a sense of scale, that is about equal to the 10 smallest states in the country combined. So the Cascade Mountains extend from lower British Columbia to northern California, vast, rugged wilderness. And there are a few thin ribbons of humanity. Columbia Gorge is one of those. There's probably half a dozen small towns, maybe 70,000 people living here. So we're talking about maybe 10 people per square mile in the populated areas, and then like 0 people per square mile in the wilderness areas. And so many folks down here have these incredible experiences. Well, our home is in Stevenson, and we're about a mile away from the river at about 800 feet in elevation. I was working on my 4x4. Since we've gotten all these reports, I have an FJ Cruiser that I've modded out with searchlights and cameras and everything. And I started hearing some vocalizations, probably about 400 yards away from the house through the woods. And I've got a 9-year-old daughter, Evelyn, and she's one of my co-investigators, and she loves it.
God bless you.
And so I called her out, and as I was listening to it, I knew that it had to be a big creature. We have elk, and we see them all the time around here. And so my first guess was that it was an elk in rut bugling, which is something that they do. But something didn't seem right about that as a theory. So Evelyn came out and she was listening. She said, "Dad, I think that's a Sasquatch." And so we called up my wife, Jill, and Jill listened. And as we're all standing there in the garage listening to these deep, almost like shouting vocalizations, we also started hearing wood knocks. So it'd be 3 knocks. And it was at a place that was distant from where the shouting was. And a lot of times it's very classic in many Bigfoot encounters to have this wood knocking type of thing.
Like a call and response.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that happened. We didn't even leave the garage, and we were hearing, possible Sasquatch vocalizations right near our home. So to answer your question, which was, is it weird? Well, almost everyone out here knows somebody who's seen Sasquatch or has seen him themselves. In fact, in Stevenson, so there are 2 counties on the Washington side, Skamania County, which is where my home is, and then Klickitat County, which is where the stores are. So Skamania County was the very first county in the country to outlaw killing Bigfoot. And in fact, if you kill Bigfoot in Skamania County, you will go to jail and pay thousands of dollars in fines. And that has been around since the 1960s, and the legislation was updated in the 1980s. And so it's a pretty serious thing out here. So these people were coming into the stores and organically telling us these stories. And like I said, to me, it was fascinating. I've had some unusual experiences myself over the years. And so my mind is pretty open. And so I put up a big sign in the window, and it said, "File your paranormal reports here." Some of the things we had heard, like Sasquatch sightings and UFO encounters, ghost experiences. People have reported seeing portals and even had temporal anomalies where they have lost time. So all these things are on the sign. Come file them here. And I instructed
Who's the record keeper? Who's the responsible for recording?
So that's me. And so I told all my employees, I said, we're going to take people seriously. We're going to believe the witness. We're not going to belittle them. We're going to ask them intelligent follow-up questions, and we're going to make them. This will be a safe place to tell your unusual stories. So much of what happens when people have unusual experiences is they're belittled or told they're crazy, and so it can become a very lonely place. And when you look at what's happening with UFO disclosures with the government, what they're finding is now that they are legitimizing this, there are many more pilots coming forward and telling their stories. And to be honest with you, one of the unexpected delights or beautiful things that have come out of this is that, we've been talking to people who come in with some kind of unusual experience, and we have a healthy, respectful conversation with them. And the sense of relief that comes over these people is really intense sometimes. And the human connections that we make have been really one of the most rewarding parts of this whole thing that we've been up to. When we started, I really didn't know, what I would do with the information. I was just curious to see what would come of it. And so far, it has been amazing. In the intro, it said over 100. Well, it's really more like close to 160, and that's in less than 2 years. A lot of folks will come in and just tell us a verbal story. Some folks, we have a form you can fill out. And just recently, we put an electronic form up at our store's website, margiesoutdoorstore.com, and folks can navigate to the paranormal section and fill out a report there.
And these sightings of whether we're talking about portals or a Sasquatch, or we'll get to the Klickitat, Ape Cat in a moment, these are in the Arcane Adventure Maps, your book?
Yeah, so calling it a book is a little bit more than what it is. So we were getting all these reports, and we have a radio advertising budget for the store, and a lot of times we ask people to file their paranormal reports here. And so people were saying, well, what do you do with the information? And so what I've done is I've created a series of self-guided tours to the paranormal hotspots in the gorge. And so the Arcane Adventure Map, it's sort of like a 4-page full-color thing. I illustrate the maps myself. You can see behind me, that's a map that I drew of the gorge itself.
Wow, that's a beautiful map.
Thank you. And cartography is sort of a hobby of mine. And so it's fun to be able to, the geologic features here are so interesting. And so we draw the maps. I have commissioned artists to recreate some of the images of some of the things that people have seen. We go through local legends and lore. Some of the actual report text is included in these, and it gives people the opportunity to go out and see for themselves. And so there's one around the Horse Thief Butte area where we've had some of the Klickitat Ape Cat sightings, also small humanoid sightings, UFO sightings, lots of strange creatures out there. And over by Beacon Rock, which is basically the cold core of an extinct volcano. And there is a trail that is literally pinned to the side of it. And you can climb all the way 840 feet up to the top. But there we've had reports of glowing orbs. The maintenance workers there talk about seeing ghostly apparitions at some of the trailheads. We have also stories of forest spirits in the area. Native American tradition calls them little people. In Europe, they're often known as fairies or elves. And so these things come, and some of them, like for me, like I said, I've got a pretty open mind, and for me, it's easy to believe in Bigfoot. We've had so many reports; people have even brought in hair samples. That's easy for me to get my head wrapped around. This giant Klickitat ape cat creature. It's another thing which I can wrap my head around. Some of the phenomenon, though, it takes me a minute to adjust. It's hard for me to imagine how little humanoids can exist. 2 to 3 feet tall, right, bipedal creatures.
James, we're going to take a quick time out. When we come back,
Sure.
I'll get you to get into the Klickitat Ape Cat. Is it an ape? Is it a cat? Is it a combination of both? We'll find out. And we are talking about the paranormal Columbia River Gorge with James Szubski. Back with more of our conversation right after this. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Sounds like the Columbia River Gorge has a reality all of its own, as we are discovering. It's a spectacular, breathtaking landscape, and coming with that is some very incredible paranormal activity. So I've never heard of an ape cat before. This is named after the county, I guess. The Klickitat ape cat. Is it only seen in Klickitat?
So most of the reports that we have had are in Klickitat County or very close to the county line. And you had mentioned that we have all this paranormal activity here. The reason why I talked about its apocalyptic origins of the gorge is it's one of my theories is that something has happened because we've had all this earth trauma here. It has maybe thinned the boundaries between worlds, or there are magnetic anomalies here that may be interacting with brain chemistry that are changing our ability to encounter things or giving things from other realms easier access to our reality. So we really don't know what's going on here. And part of the reason why I am conducting interviews is to invite legitimate investigators to come out and check it out for themselves, because there is a host of mysteries, and it seems to me like we have we're over indexing. There's more than you'd find in other places.
Yeah, it sounds like the Skinwalkers Ranch writ large.
Yeah, it's a pretty like it's sort of like when you're, messing around in the woods and you kick over a log, and underneath there's this whole world of creatures running around. And that's kind of what it feels like has happened. It's really fun because, a couple times a week, someone walks in the door and shows me a new Scooby-Doo mystery. And so my daughter and I love it. And my employees are totally into it. And, the community is really kind of rallying behind it. And so a lot of folks they know that we live in a strange and unusual place. And a lot of the locals are really enjoying, having a forum to talk about it. And so the ape cat is a very unusual phenomenon. A gentleman walked in the store, and there's ways you can tell if people are joking around or just having fun. And we don't mind if people come in and have a tall tale to tell. No harm, no foul. But it's usually pretty clear if someone is joking around or someone's pretty serious. Now, this gentleman took him about 45 minutes to work up the courage to tell me what he had experienced. And in those 45 minutes, we talked, and it turns out that his family was good friends with my mother-in-law, Margie. She was a pharmacist, and she had helped their family with some medical things. And so there was a family connection, and that sort of enhanced my willingness to believe that what he was telling me was true. And he said that he was up near Buck Creek, which is about maybe 4 or 5 miles from the store. It leads into a tributary that flows into the Columbia River. And he was orienteering with a map and compass. His compass started acting strange. The needle was bending away from north. And then he looked up across the river and he saw this enormous black panther-like creature. He described it as being extremely muscular, black fur, and a long black tail. Its fur was 4 to 5 inches long, and incredibly, it stood about 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder. All right, so right now, there's a couple of things that are going on that are highly unusual. Of course, we have cougars out here, and cougars really don't mess with folks that much. But cougars are always tan, and when they get darker in coloration, they go to more of a reddish color. When we talk to wildlife biologists and specialists, they all tell us there are no such thing as black cougars. The only large black cat in North America is the jaguar, but its range is 1,000 miles south of Klickitat County in southern Arizona and New Mexico, in that area.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we're hearing about a black cat here in the Columbia River Gorge, right there, bells are going off in my head. Like, this is not a normal thing. The
and fact that it's that large either. A panther, they're not that 4.5 feet at the shoulder.
So a typical cougar is maybe going to be 24 inches at the shoulder, 2 feet at the shoulder. And that's a big animal when you see it. It's a ferocious thing. Well, 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder, that is larger than a tiger, which is the largest existing cat on the planet. There is only one animal in the fossil record that matches that size, and that's Panthera atrox, which is one of those ice age animals that supposedly went extinct during the Younger Dryas catastrophe. And so So that's a creature that skeleton supports a 4 foot tall at the shoulder cat. Interestingly, its brain cavity is larger than any cat, both by total capacity and in comparison to the rest of its body weight. They believe that these animals were between 800 and 1,000 pounds. Enormous creatures.
You had a picture up earlier. Sorry, James.
Yes. In fact, let me share the screen here and see if I can bring that up. Yeah. So this is an artist representation of that encounter. What we're looking at is a gentleman in a backpack standing deep in the forest. And I should tell you that because of the Cascade Mountains, everything to the west of the sort of my store is rainforest. So it sees over 100 inches of rain a year. Everything to the east of it is actual desert, and it sees less than 10 inches of rain a year. It's because the mountains form this sort of rain shadow. And so here he is in Pacific Northwest rainforest looking at a cat that is gigantic. And so that is one image that to try to explain just the enormous size of this thing. In front of the store, we have a plywood cutout that's black so people can see how big it is compared to themselves. Right. And then he took a deep breath and he said, and the strangest thing is that it had a face that looked like a monkey. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yeah, it looked like, I mean, the best way I can describe it is a combination between a cat and a monkey. Its nose was flattened. It had intelligent ape-like eyes and other primate features. And I always keep a few of his details back because when other people tell the story, I want to have something to compare it to.
Right.
And so he was very earnest, seemed very, very genuine. And again, you know, our default position is that we're going to believe the people who come in. If they are courageous enough to tell us an unusual story, we'll believe it and will not assume that they're liars or they're crazy or something like that, that this is a person that's had an experience that most people haven't had. And so the next day I was really excited and I started talking to my employees. And there's a gal who works in one of my businesses. Her name is Missy. She's honest as the day is long. And as I started describing this creature, she started shaking. And she said, oh my God, I have seen that thing myself. I was driving to work one morning down Klickitat Canyon. So that's probably 10 miles east of us. It's one of the river canyons that flows off of Mount Adams. And she saw this, she was driving along and she saw this enormous black cat with a long black tail walking near the side of the road. She saw it enter a small patch of tall grass. So she stopped her car to observe what was going on. She didn't get a look at its face. She said after a few minutes, she didn't see it come out the other side. And it wasn't a big patch of grass. And so she actually got out of her car. She thought that she should maybe warn the houses that were nearby that there's a giant predator. But as she got close to the grass, there was nothing there. And but she clearly saw it as clear as day. There's no question in her mind. She told her family about it, and they suggested that maybe she had seen a cow. Now, if you think about it, like this is a grown woman, and if, for instance, if you saw a Ferrari driving down the street, a red Ferrari, and you said, "Hey guys, I saw a red Ferrari," and your friend said, red Ferraris are super rare. What you probably saw was a minivan. You'd be like, no, I know what the difference is between a cow and a cat, a minivan and a Ferrari. And so once she kind of got those responses, she just stopped talking about it. And then when I told her about this experience, there was this great sense of relief within her. In fact, she was shaking because of it. And it was then that I realized, okay, these are two people that have credible stories, at least in my opinion. So I think that there's something here. And like I mentioned, I've got, radio budget for the stores. And so we started putting out ads. Has anyone seen a creature like this? And I put up flyers at the local trailheads. And since then, we've had over 60 reports of this enormous black cat. So
the first encounter that you heard about, the man that was doing some orientating, did he feel as if this creature was menacing at all?
No, that's a really good point. So we have reports now that go back 30 years, and there's not a single report that is of a hostile encounter. His experience was that it was a magical experience, is the way he described it, something that felt more uplifting. He knew that he was in the presence of something special. So he wasn't afraid. In fact, he spent about 5 minutes looking at it. And we've had other folks who have seen it, and their headlamp and their phone battery died simultaneously while they're observing it. So there seems to be some kind of electromagnetic effect when you look at the compass, possibility of messing up a compass, possibility of draining batteries. We have obviously, features that seem impossible. By our understanding of nature, you've got a creature that is violating the laws, our understanding of how natural processes work. This cat is too big to be an animal recognized by science. It seems to be able to vanish and reappear. And again, the reports they're verbal reports. I'm not a scientist, and so I'm not trained in gathering data in that way. But it seems like there are a lot of clues that indicate that there may be something paranormal going on with this creature.
There's also
inconclusive for sure.
There's also a theory that it may be connected with some Cold War nuclear tests.
Yeah. And so, like I said, we've had now close to 60 reports. A lot of the reports, some of them are very mundane. I'm driving my ATV. This giant black cat jumps across the trail, scares the crap out of me. I never see it again. Other people say they've seen it. I've had 3 reports of people saying they've seen it leap across a road, and it's as long as the 2 lanes of a road when it jumps. So absolutely enormous. And as I'm trying to make sense of okay, we've even had senior law enforcement officials tell me that they've seen it. And so we're trying to make sense of where is this thing coming from? Now, there are Indian petroglyphs nearby that seem to show a cat-like creature. And the Great Lakes Native American tribes, where you live, have stories about a creature they call Mishepashu, which is an underwater panther protector. When they talk about things being from underwater, they're talking about things from the spirit realm or from another dimension. And it's known as a panther protector. In fact, my research indicates that in nearly every culture around the world, the Black Panther spiritual meaning is that of a protector creature. Very interesting. But the Mishepashu is described in some accounts as a Black Panther with the face of a man. And so that to me is a curious correlation. And I've been trying to connect with the tribes here in the gorge, but rightfully so, they're cautious of outsiders, and it takes a long time to build relationships of trust. And so because I'm fairly new to the area, that's something that I'm still working on. But again, we've got these petroglyphs here. But you had mentioned this Cold War element. So about 100 miles upstream from us is the Hanford nuclear plant. Now, during World War II, the Allies were terrified that the Nazis were going to unlock the secrets of the atom before the Allies did. And so they initiated the Manhattan Project. Very famously, Los Alamos is where they built the bomb. But the Hanford site in eastern Washington, which is actually on the Columbia River, was the place where they built the reactors that created the plutonium that went into the bombs. And so you have to understand, things were happening at Hanford. First of all, it was, it's now known as the Department of Energy. But back then, it was the precursor to that. And it was our country's most top secret site because we were creating elements that didn't exist in nature. We were literally messing with the fabric of reality at Hanford. And with the goal of unlocking the secrets of the atom. So, of course, the bomb is the most obvious thing that everybody was worried about. But the Nazis were also very interested in creating super animals and super soldiers. They had brought back, this is apparently historically verified, an Ice Age creature called the aurochs. And the aurochs is a hyper-aggressive, gigantic bull-like creature. And through retrobreeding and all these other weird Nazi science things, they had created a herd of them and set them loose in a forest in Europe. And so everyone knows that we were concerned about the bomb, but there are some parts of our military leadership that were concerned about, well, radiation induces mutation. We better have an answer to that. And so from day one, Hanford also had an animal testing program. And the guy that they chose to run it was a professor from the University of Washington. His name is Dr. Loren Donaldson. And he is famous. His only academic achievement of note before he was assigned to this role was he had created what's known as the Donaldson super trout. He had, through retro breeding, created a superfish that was 8 times stronger and larger than a normal trout. This thing's reached reproductive maturity in half the time. It could swim in salt water and fresh water. And it was incredibly strong, incredibly survivable. And so Donaldson is the guy that they picked to run the animal testing program at Hanford from the very beginning. It wasn't even like an afterthought. He eventually, so we win the war. The very first nuclear weapon that was ever exploded during the Trinity test was with plutonium from Hanford, and then the Nagasaki bomb was with plutonium from Hanford. And then the Cold War started because the Russians started scooping up Nazi scientists, and so we started scooping them up as well through Operation Paperclip. And so Cold War launches. Donaldson goes to the South Pacific, and he's part of like Bikini Atoll and the disastrous Castle Bravo tests and all that kind of stuff. And a guy named Bill Baer takes over the animal testing laboratory at Hanford. Bill Baer is a World War II veteran. He specialized in amphibious warfare. And so I was able to uncover some oral histories from the Hanford History Project of Bill Baer. And there's 3 different interviews where he talks about how they were doing radiological testing on apex predators. And so he tells a story of how they had, the reports vary between 25 and 50 alligators that they're testing. And some of these videos even holds up pictures of the device they used to irradiate the alligators. And he tells a story of how one night, 6 of these experimental apex predators outsmarted the scientists and escaped into the Columbia River. And so they had these 6 irradiated experimental apex predators swimming around. And there are newspaper articles that confirm this is an historical fact. And they send out army hunting teams, and they only ever capture 4 of them. And we've had reports like Bill Baer in some of these oral histories says that, yeah, even in the 80s, he was getting questions about whether he knew anything about alligators in the Columbia River. And we've had reports of people having their kayaks, pulled on by something underwater and trying to drag them down. So they only ever catch 4 of the 6 alligators, and it's an interesting story. So what does that have to do with cats? Well, right now, a quarter of the U.S. nuclear stockpile is guarded by dolphins. This is a program that was started in the late 1950s. They realized that sonar can't tell the difference between a sea lion, a tuna, and a Soviet scuba diver. And so they were experimenting with dolphins, and they realized that these creatures are hyper intelligent, eminently trainable, and they devised a program where the dolphins wear an apparatus that's a little bit like a harpoon on their nose. And when they detect an enemy diver, they hit the diver, the barbed spike goes into him, inflates a balloon, and takes that diver to the surface, and then the Navy scoops him up and they can interrogate him. So we know for a fact that the Cold Warriors were thinking out of the box, and they were trying anything they could to protect our nation's most important nuclear sites. Now, Hanford is by far the most important nuclear site, because anywhere you've got nuclear missiles, they had to start in Hanford because that's where the plutonium came from. So there was 4 Nike missile launch sites at Hanford. The idea being Nike missiles are nuclear-tipped surface-to-air missiles, and if Russian bombers came over America, they would detonate nuclear-tipped missiles over U.S. populations rather than have those bombers hit Hanford. Like, that's how serious they were. Hanford's got 90 miles of river coastline that it needs to protect, and you can't bring dolphins into fresh water. So if you're a Cold Warrior, your next thought is, okay, what is the most effective riverine predator in the world? And the answer is, it's the black jaguar. Jaguars can hold their breath, excuse me, they can hold their breath for 15 minutes. They can eat underwater. They can swim over a kilometer in open ocean. They have the ability to kill caiman alligators with a single bite to the back of the head. In fact, pound for pound, they are the strongest of the big cats on the planet. They have night vision that is 6 times better than a human being. And they always, always, always instinctively drag their prey to shore. So if you're a Cold Warrior, this is the ideal guardian animal. You couldn't have written, if you made a grocery list of like, okay, we need the animal that does all that stuff, the black jaguar has got it all. And so the problem is jaguars are notoriously the hardest to train of the big cats. Easiest to train are lions, and you see them in every circus. Turns out that jaguars and lions can mate. And in fact, in Canada right now, there's a thing called a jag lion. There was a jaguar and a lion living in a captivity together in like one of those preserves, and they loved each other very much. And they had two offspring, and one of them is this enormous black jag lion. And so it is 100% genetically viable for lions and jaguars to mate and create viable offspring. What we think happened was that there was a jaguar sentinel program at Hanford. And just like the alligators, those animals outsmarted the scientists and escaped. And just like the alligators, they couldn't recapture them all. And now they're a viable population here in Klickitat County.
James, I got to jump in here. Absolutely fascinating. A quick timeout back to more of our discussion of the mysterious paranormal Columbia River Gorge. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.